In July, Formula One released so-called blueprints for 2021, the latest in a long line of teasers and updates about the long-awaited revamp in the technical regulations. While the blueprints, more a showcase of principles and design philosophies than anything too specific, covered a breadth of thinking on where this new era would take us, I wanted to focus on a specific aspect of the regulations that's finally been confirmed: the return to ground effect-focused aerodynamics. Ground effect had been speculated on and argued for as a means to solving a lot of F1's modern aerodynamic problems. That the complex overbody aero was causing chaos to the air behind each car and providing an invisible barrier to cars in pursuit. Simply, the airflow behind an F1 car is so turbulent and violently disrupted that the aerodynamics of the car behind simply stop functioning properly, with current cars losing almost half their downforce when just 2 car lengths behind another. Ground effect is nothing new. It had a pretty short-lived but intense heyday in Formula One from the late 70s to the early 80s until it was banned outright on safety grounds. Almost all of the restrictions on the underbody of the car, including the need for a plank, the diffuser regulations, and the incredibly strict floor heights and dimensions, developed as extensions of the banning of any attempts to overexploit the ground effect. So let's take a step back. What is ground effect, and what did it look like originally, and why was it banned in the first place? Back in 1977, wings and overbody aero were already being put to good use in generating downforce for the cars, manipulating the airflow over the cars to push them into the ground, increasing their overall grip. But this downforce came with baggage: drag. If you stick a big wing on the back of your car, it also has a parachute-like effect, acting as a big air brake by blocking the fast airflow over the car, reducing maximum speed. Finding a nice trade-off between downforce, or lift, and drag has always been part of the engineering problem since wings were invented. However, Lotus realised you could generate downforce in a different way, a way that doesn't disrupt the airflow half as much as a big old wing sticking out of your car, and that's by exploiting the Venturi effect underneath the car. The Venturi effect is a pretty simple phenomenon exhibited by fluids, air also being a type of fluid. If you imagine air molecules flowing through a pipe, the rate of molecules flowing through the opening of the pipe has to be the same as the rate of molecules leaving the pipe. If 10 molecules a second enter the pipe and only 5 molecules per second leave the pipe, it would all clog up. But that doesn't happen, the molecules here will force the rest out to match their rate. Okay, but imagine we squeeze the pipe in the middle now. We still have to have the molecules moving at the same rate, but now there's less room for them, so they have to physically speed up to fit through the restricted, or choked, section. So what we have is an area of faster moving air in the middle here, and that comes with a big drop in air pressure. And if you lower the air pressure, you create a suction effect. So instead of a pipe, if we just shape the underbody of our car in such a way that airflow goes through a choke point, we'll create a big area of low pressure right at that point. And the low pressure will suck the car towards the ground, and that's exactly the same effect as downforce. You've manipulated the energy of the airflow to pull the car towards the ground. And also, because the diffuser works to gently return the accelerated air back to its free stream velocity, you can do all this without completely throwing the air into complete chaos behind you, in the way that wings in bodywork do. A key to maximising the effectiveness of these Venturi tunnels under the car was sticking skirts on the car. Essentially just a strip of bodywork that sealed off the edge of the floor as close to the ground as possible, so the majority of the air was forced through your Venturi tunnels and wouldn't escape out the sides of the floor. So it sounds amazing, right? And it was. Lotus started a development race that got everybody focusing on the underside of their car, and cornering speeds climbed rapidly. Rising cornering speeds will always catch the eye of the FIA, as this starts to become a huge risk factor. The downforce was heavily reliant on the skirts working properly, and if they broke, or if the car bounced heavily over a bump lifting the skirt away from the track, then the cars could very suddenly lose a lot of downforce. Being halfway around a high-speed corner only to lose masses of downforce unexpectedly puts you in an incredibly dangerous position, especially back in the early 80s before serious overhauls in track and car safety took place through subsequent decades. So, skirts were banned and cars' floors were raised, and then the entire floor of the car was mandated to be flat, essentially removing all Venturi tunnels under the car, though diffusers were allowed to manage the escape of the airflow under the car. Nowadays, cars have a stepped floor with a minimum height reference plane, where the plank sits, and a step plane 50mm above that. This reduces the ability to create low pressure flow under the car. Okay, so let's look forward to 2021 then. If ground effect is so dangerous it's been enthusiastically banned for 3.5 decades, then why allow it back? Well, there are a few reasons. For one, the cars on the track are a lot safer now, and we can have more control over cornering speeds through other means should we need to. Secondly, the overbody aero is so exaggerated now that a new means to generating the high downforce and awesome cornering speeds that F1 is all about has had to come from some rethinking of old ideas. Thirdly, we're not going all the way back to the 80s style skirts mega ground effect cars. Instead, the India prototype model exhibited in the most current blueprints meets them only some of the way. Now firstly, we're not bringing back the unreliable skirts as we knew them in the current proposal. We're going to do something else, which I'll explain in a moment. The new floor is now going to look something like this. The old T-tray squared off plane will now be allowed to taper and allow air to flow through these Venturi tunnels that flow the length of the side pods and back to the diffuser. The air will be managed into these tunnels by reappropriating turning vanes to maximise the efficiency of the flow. Everything will flow into a deeper, taller diffuser that will be able to manage the transition between this fast flowing air and the free air behind the car. Now in place of skirts, we have these long vanes running the length of the diffuser that help seal the airflow from the floor through the diffuser. But instead of being mounted to the car body, they appear to be extensions of the rear brake duct structure and thus will maintain a height consistent with the tyre, not the chassis. This by extension means they'll be more reliably level with the ground even as the chassis travels through the suspension. So, as we move the downforce generation to the underbody, we see a lot of aero effects being taken away from other parts of the car. The rear wing now is stylish and simplified without strict end plates, which reduces its downforce as well as its wake. We have this lower element to the rear wing here that extends the effect of the diffuser and the underbody flow. The front wing too continues to be simplified, and joining it to the nose all but takes away the huge Y250 vortex the teams fight to generate that currently produces a heap of turbulent outwash. The small vanes cradling the front wheels as well as the return of wheel covers will work to smooth the airflow en route to the turning vanes and underbody. And if this works, as developments in the CFD model continue, we could see an entirely new philosophy of car development from 2021. And as DRS looks increasingly likely to be eliminated in these designs, there seems to be a growing confidence that closer racing will soon return.